Hi, students. It's Professor Wood here. Just wanted to touch base with you and speak with you about the next research notebook assignment, which is the annotated bibliography. So I thought I would share a slideshow with you and go over what an annotated bibliography looks like. So just going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So what is an annotated bibliography? Basically, you're looking at a list of citations for books, articles, and documents. Each citation is followed by a brief, usually about 100 to 150 words, descriptive and evaluative paragraph, which is your actual annotation. The purpose of this annotation is to inform the reader of the relevance, accuracy, and quality of the sources cited. So what you're going to be looking at here, when you're doing your research and you're looking on the library, remember it has to be a scholarly academic source. You will run across articles that have abstracts. The abstracts are just literally descriptive summaries that are often found at the beginning of scholarly journal articles or in periodical indexes. Your annotations are descriptive and critical. They will expose the author's point of view, the clarity and the appropriateness of expression and authority. That is probably the most important thing about your annotated bibliography, is that you make sure your sources are reliable and you check the credentials of your writers. So Wikipedia, for example, is not a valid source. I'm sure you've heard that for quite some time, but I try to make sure that all my students are aware that Wikipedia is not a scholarly source. Your source has to come from the school library database. It has to be peer reviewed. And that's where all of your sources should come from, but at least a minimum of 3. Your process when you're writing an annotated bibliography, creating an annotated bibliography calls for the application of a variety of intellectual skills. So it's going to really require concise expression, exposition, analysis that is very succinct, and informed library research. This does mean you're going to have to read the articles that you pick. And that's the biggest thing that I can tell you. The biggest piece of advice is make sure you're actually reading the articles. The first thing you need to do is find the articles. You have to locate and record citations to your books or periodicals, peer-reviewed, anything, any book that is published by a reputable publisher would work. Because it has been through a peer editing process already. And so that would also work as long as it was published within the last 10 years. Documents contain useful information and ideas on your topic as well. And then again, like I said, you are going to have to read your sources. So you want to briefly examine and review the sources and then choose the ones that will work better. So I tell students all the time, if your annotated bibliography calls for 3 sources, which is what yours does, have 5 ready, because not all of your sources are going to work for your research paper. And then you want to look for works, scholarly articles that provide a variety of perspectives on your topic. So as you're going through that, the process, you're going to go ahead and create your citation using the appropriate style. In this case, it is MLA. Then you're going to read the article. You want to write a concise annotation. That means it needs to be scholarly, professional, formally written. And you want it to summarize the central theme and scope of either the book or the article. So I recommend including 1 or more sentences that A, evaluate the authority or background of the author, B, comment on the intended audience, C, compare or contrast this work with another that you have cited, or D, explain how this work illuminates your bibliography topic, your research paper topic. The one thing I don't want to see you doing in an annotated bibliography is say something like, this helps my research because. Don't want to see that sentence. What you want to say is, this research will enhance the paper with its, or something along those lines, because it's formal and you're keeping yourself out of it without using personal pronouns. So when you're critically appraising the book, article, or document, and this is something that I'm just going to go ahead and go over just slightly, because next week's video lesson will be on what we call the CRAP test. You really want to think about several different questions. These are questions to consider. What are the author's credentials? What is their institutional affiliation? What college are they working at? Was it a master's thesis? Was it a dissertation? Is it a tenured professor at Harvard University? Something like that. Have you seen the author's name cited in other sources or other bibliographies? Typically, when you're dealing with respected authors, they're cited frequently by other scholars. When was the source published? This is very important because when you're doing a research project, you want to make sure that your sources are typically within the last 10 years. If you go any further back than that, you're taking a risk at getting some dated information. So you really want to make sure that your sources are current. Is it a first edition article? That means, did it go through any revisions? Typically, when articles are published, sometimes once they're published, they'll go through a second revision after they've been published and then republished again in another year. If the source is published by a university press, it is most likely to be scholarly. One thing I will tell you is if it comes out of our library, then most likely it is scholarly sources, in the sense that a book has been through the peer review process, as I stated previously, or if you're using the databases, if you're using Gale, if you're using JSTOR, everything on JSTOR is scholarly. There's no popular magazine articles, no blogs, none of that nonsense that goes with it, because that's unreliable information. So you want to make sure you have credible information. Is it a popular magazine? Again, after you have your scholarly sources, if you want to utilize a popular magazine, that is perfectly fine, but you have to keep in mind that you need to have experts in your field and people that have published papers. So popular magazine like People Magazine or Us Weekly, things like that, those are not necessarily sources that I would consider scholarly, and every other professor that I've encountered has said absolutely not. Those are not scholarly. The last thing is a publication aimed at a specialized or a general audience. Now, this goes into effect with things like JAMA, the Journal for the American Medical Association, or Political Science Monthly, or the National Councils for Teachers of English. I mean, those are all specialized journals aimed at a specialized audience. The Journal for English Teachers talks about different areas of English that can be taught, and modern methods of teaching online and in person, things like that. Anything that's published in JAMA, which is the Journal for the American Medical Association, typically those are research studies and questions or research that doctors and physicians have done in just about every single field of medicine. So those are scholarly journals. Trust me, people do not read these for entertainment purposes. They read them for research purposes only. Some more questions to think about. Look at your bibliography, your works cited at the end of the scholarly research that you pull, because you can do mining. You can look for other sources within that bibliography. So always look at that. You want to actually ask yourself, again, is the information covered? Is it fact? Is it opinion? Is it propaganda? You want to see if there's any bias in there. Is your information valid, well-researched, or is it questionable and unsupported by evidence? Again, that goes back to my previous statement about the blogs. You want to make sure you're not using those for sources, because those are not reliable sources. Another question, are the ideas and arguments advanced more or less in line with other works that you have read on the same topic? So do they say the same thing? Is your paper that you're reading, scholarly article, 5 pages long, or is it 57 pages long? So that's where you're looking at the extensively or marginally covering your topic. Sometimes you'll find a source that has 1 or 2 paragraphs about your topic in there, and there's a couple of quotes in there that you want to use. In that sense, it would be a source that marginally covers your topic, but there's a blanket topic as well. And then again, looking at primary and secondary sources. So primary sources would be things like books. Secondary sources are peer journaled articles. And then you want to locate critical reviews, such as Book Review Index, the Book Review Digest, or periodical abstracts. All of those things are available at the library. MLA formatting, of course, you can get the handbook if you want to get the handbook. It is available at our bookstore at South Florida State College. You also have the online citation guides for both MLA at the Purdue OWL website and easybib.com to help with citations if you're still struggling. I do want to make sure that I vehemently and say it very, 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 very loud and clear is that you have to make sure you have parenthetical citations. If you quote it, you have to cite it in a parenthetical citation and then again in your works cited page. So make sure that is taken care of. This example here, just looking at it, Flynn Richard, The Kindergarten of New Consciousness, Gwendolyn Brooks, and the Social Construction of Childhood. I'm going to use my mouse here. The title of the journal always goes in quotation marks. Or this is the title of the article, actually. This will go in quotation marks, and then your title of your journal will go in italics. So you'll always know what the title of the journal is because it's in italics, and the article title is in quotation marks. And again, this is pages 483 to 99. It appeared in, this is your volume number, and then this is your issue number. So this was published 22 years ago in the fall of 2000, but it is a good example of what a citation looks like. And then underneath it, you would have an annotation. So looking at that, you want 5 or 6 sentences describing the article. You want information about the author of the article, the point of view, and the school of thought. Is it a biased accounting? If you're doing your paper on immigration and you are reading papers written by people who are against immigration, I always tell students that it's a good idea to find something that opposes your topic just so that you have a separate side to look at. And this will actually help you as you are starting to put your paper together. You also want to notate what type of article it is. Is it literary criticism? Well, since you're not in 1102, it's not literary criticism, but is it a historical piece? Is it biographical? Is it an informational essay? Is it a doctoral dissertation? All of those things, all of that information. When you're reading a doctoral dissertation or a master's dissertation, usually there's a dedication at the top. So you just kind of want to look at those types of things when you are beginning to do your annotated bibliography. And then these are things that an annotation should include. Again, you have to have the complete bibliographic information, and then you can either have some or you can have all of them. You want information to explain the authority and qualifications of the author. So this sample sentence here that I've got, Dr. William Smith is a history professor at XYZ University, and he based his book on 20 years of research. Here you have credentialing. He's a doctor. He was a history professor, has been there for quite some time, and then he has completed 20 years worth of research. So he's a credible source. And then you want to look at the scope and the main purpose of the work. Why did this researcher decide to write this paper? If you detect any biases, as I previously mentioned, that's very important. And who is the audience? Is it a difficult read? I can tell you that in my own humble experience as a writer and a researcher, I have run across articles, especially those that are in the medical fields, that are very difficult to read. They have difficult words to pronounce, things like that. So just keep that in mind as you're going through looking for research sources. And then the relationship to any other works in the area of study. So, you know, if you're reading an article about immigration and then there's another article about DACA, there's a relationship there because the two topics are interconnected. The authors may not even know each other, but they're probably going to be saying a lot of the same thing. So you may want to look at something along those lines if there's any other works in that area of studying. And then a summary comment. So you can say something along the lines of, this is a popular account of the Eastland tragedy in Chicago, and it's aimed at educated adults. Certainly that would work, something along those lines. And again, 150 to 200 words. So I'm just going to show you a book example of a annotation. This is from 1989. It's on The Great Comic Book Artist. It's volume 2. It was published by St. Martin's Press, which is a reputable press company. And then you can see the annotation that I have here. It begins underneath it. It says the alphabetically arranged entries include one page each for the artist biography, and black and white reprinted art. The subjective choices for inclusion reflect a pronounced American corporate bias. This slant and the blurry comic book reproductions render the title a cut below Goulart's usual high standards. So here you have what your article is mainly about, and then you also have mentioning here that the author that wrote the article, it is below the typical standards such author has been known to write about. And that is your evaluation of the material that you're researching. Here is another example for you. The Guinness Encyclopedia of Popular Music, published in London, City Guinness. So again, you have your annotation here. Notice the sentences are a little bit shorter. Very comprehensive reference book of 3,296 pages. So you're evaluating the source. You're talking about how long it is and what it's about. And then in parentheses, you have more than 1,000 entries encompassing all styles of popular music, including jazz. So if the student is writing a paper about jazz and this has a little bit of information about it, the said student's going to pull that information out and utilize that, while at the same time annotating what this article is about. Primarily biographical, again, that tells you what type of analytical research that you have. And then you say, but does conclude record label histories. Entries from 150 to 3,000 words, though some important artists have longer entries. So that's really important. You're kind of looking at the credibility, you're looking at the length of the article, you're looking at how it is set up, and you're just making commentary on that in a formal manner. Most artists from the UK and the US, although additionally many reggae, Latin, and Afro-pop artists from outside these countries. Most entries include discography. So it's just that simple. It's not a very difficult annotation. Don't make it out to be more than it is. And of course, you'll be able to play this video and replay this video all you want to on your computers. I know a lot of people get tired of hearing my voice, but if you want to replay it or watch the captioning while you're working on your assignment, it certainly will help. The next slide here. I guess that's the end of the slide. So this is really what an annotated bibliography looks like, with entries and just a little bit of background information on what an annotated bib is. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up a sample annotated bibliography just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Just have to find my SFSC folder here and do a search for annotated bib. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen once again with you just to give you an idea and let you see what a solid annotated bibliography looks like. And then I'm going to share here, and I hope you can see that. But this is a annotated bibliography that was done by a previous student. I have changed names on it. So teacher's name, student's name, everything else. The date is 100% authentic, but everything else is not. So this particular essay is titled Lame Brain, Marijuana and Its Effects on the Human Brain. So this particular student was writing a research paper on the effects of marijuana in the human brain. So in this particular first thing, the author, you have your citation here. It was printed in Psychiatric Times. So it was primarily an audience of psychiatrists, and it was retrieved from Academic One File, which we know as Gale on our databases. So the author of this text implicitly explains the blatant and common usage of marijuana among teens and adolescents, as well as the effects it has on the brains of these young adults in the long term. Furthermore, the author discusses and attempts to explain common misconceptions regarding the usage and the long-term effects of this so-called harmless drug. The author of this article is an associate professor of Harvard Medical School and is a practicing neuroscientist working with people who suffer from addictions and illnesses related to complications from its long-term use of marijuana. Additionally, this article illustrates the very real consequences in marijuana dependency in young adults and emphasizes the importance of educating the immature mind about the effects of marijuana, as well as changing the mindset of those individuals who who encounter them, such as doctors, teachers, parents, friends, and most influentially, the media. So that's just one annotation, and I'm just going to sort of demonstrate to you what I would do. And if I were looking at your paper, which I will be when you turn it in, one of the first things that I will do is download it to Word just so that I can get an idea of it. But I went over here to review, and I'm going to check word count here. And in this particular section I have highlighted, there's 147 words. So that's about the length of your annotations that you'll have to do. The second one, again, it's marijuana use and neuroscience perspective. You have the citation correct, and then you have the author of this article is a doctor who is employed at the executive director of the Spectrum Center for Integrative Neuroscience based in Chicago, Illinois. So you have the place, you have the title, you have all of that information right there within your first couple of sentences, because again, you want to check the credentials of the individual that you are reading the articles from. And remember, you can print up to 25 pages in the library a day. So if you need to print some articles, so sorry, I had to yawn, then you can print articles. This one, again, I just read to you the qualification. This article poses a question to the reader, which involves asking the reader to consider whether there are indeed significant consequences for partaking in the chronic use of marijuana. Can't talk today. According to the article, there's little to no data to support the hypothesis that marijuana usage is indeed harmful to the brain, yet the cognition of young adults is stunted when faced with tremendous and chronic marijuana usage, oftentimes resulting in difficulty concentration in educational studies and lack of motivation to pursue higher education. The author of this article references several different studies, but is unable to predict whether long-term marijuana usage does, in fact, have significant and detrimental consequences to the developing adolescent mind. So with that being said, that is a sample. I'll go ahead and email that to everyone. I hope this has helped you with the annotated bibliography, and please feel free to reach out to me for any questions. As always, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to hearing from you. And I should be just about caught up on all your grading, but if I missed something, please let me know. If you need an extended date, please send me an email and I'll be happy to extend that for you. Thanks again and have a wonderful week.